Can you imagine a group of humans that remain to be uncontacted and isolated from the outside world for about 60,000 years, still existing on an island without knowing that there exists a much developed world beyond their island, without even knowing how to make fire on their own, without knowing about electricity or internet, about the various dynasties, kingdoms and world wars that reigned beyond their island by the same human species as they are, without knowing about the pyramids to the skyscrapers of New York City. They don't even know that the helicopters that fly over their island are not alien gods but made by people of their own species. This island might contain some of the plants and animals which might be totally unknown or extinct in the outside world, but might have survived in the isolated island for about 60,000 years. These humans are thought to be directly descended from the first human populations to emerge from Africa, and have probably lived in the Andaman Islands for up to 60,000 years and kill anyone who tried to set foot on their island. Yes, you heard it right. So hello all, I am AI Bobby, a time traveler, and I will be navigating you through the world of untold stories, so welcome aboard to the Untold Stories. Please do click on the subscribe button for more such untold stories. So today I am going to tell you about the Sentinelese people living on the North Sentinel Island, the world's most isolated and uncontacted island. So let's get started. The Sentinelese tribe lives on the small forested North Sentinel Island, which is located in the Bay of Bengal and is part of the Union Territory of the Andaman and Nicobar Islands of India. Perhaps no people on earth remain more genuinely isolated than the Sentinelese. They are thought to be directly descended from the first human populations to emerge from Africa, and have probably lived in the Andaman Islands for up to 60,000 years. The fact that their language is so different even from other Andaman Islanders suggests that they have had little contact with other people for thousands of years. It is believed that they still do not know to make fire on their own, and it appears that they wait for lightning strikes on the island to make a fire, and then they keep it going for as long as possible. The tribe, which leads a hunter-gathering lifestyle, is believed to still use only Stone Age tools and generally are classified to be belonging to the Stone Age period. However, in the recent years they are found to in fact make tools and weapons from metal, which they recover from ships wrecked on the island's reefs. We even do not know what they call themselves or what their island is called, which still remains unknown, though the neighboring Onge tribe called North Sentinel, Chia Daa Quo Quae. The Sentinelese hunt and gather in the forest, and fish in the coastal waters. Unlike the neighboring Jarawa tribe, they make boats, and these are in the form of narrow outrigger canoes. These can only be used in shallow waters as they are steered and propelled with a pole like a punt. They are a nomadic, hunter-gatherer tribe, and it is thought that the Sentinelese live in 3 small bands. They have 2 different types of houses: large communal huts with several hearths for a number of families, and more temporary shelters, with no sides, which can sometimes be seen on the beach, with space for 1 family unit. The women wear fiber strings tied around their waists, necks and heads. The men also wear necklaces and headbands, but with a thicker waist belt. The men carry spears, bows and arrows. Like so many isolated tribal people with a fearsome reputation, the Sentinelese are often inaccurately described as savage or backward. Their hostility to outsiders, though, is easily understandable, for the outside world has brought them little but violence and contempt. The first recorded contact with the Sentinelese occurred during British colonial rule in the late 19th century. The British, as part of their colonial administration, attempted to make contact with the Sentinelese. An expedition led by Maurice Vidal Portman, a government administrator who hoped to research the natives and their customs, landed on North Sentinel Island in. The group found a network of pathways and several small, abandoned villages. Perhaps the Sentinelese had hidden themselves deep inside the forests upon knowing the arrival of foreign people. After several days of search, 6 Sentinelese, an elderly couple and 4 children were taken to Port Blair. Unfortunately, they soon fell ill and both the adults died. Perhaps The elderly couple contracted and died of diseases they had not built immunity for, as the Sentinelese being isolated from the outside world from about 60,000 years. Hence their bodies would not have adapted to possess the immunity against various disease vectors like flu or measles. The children were taken back to their island with a number of gifts. It is not known how many Sentinelese became ill as a result of this, but it's likely that the children would have passed on their diseases and the results would have been devastating. And this horrific incident and traumatic story must have been passed over generations, and from this experience may account for the Sentinelese's continued hostility and rejection of outsiders. During the 1970s, the Indian authorities made occasional trips to North Sentinel in an attempt to befriend the Sentinelese. These were often at the behest of dignitaries who wanted an adventure. On one of these trips, 2 pigs and a doll were left on the beach. The Sentinelese speared the pigs and buried them, along with the doll. Such visits became more regular in the 1980s. The teens would try to land at a place out of the reach of arrows, and leave gifts such as coconuts, bananas and bits of iron. Sometimes the Sentinelese appeared to make friendly gestures. At others they would take the gifts into the forest and then fire arrows at the contact party. In the mid-1977, the cargo ship MV Rusli ran aground on coastal reefs, and the MV Primrose did so on the 2nd of August 1981. After the Primrose grounded on the North Sentinel Island reef, crewmen several days later noticed that some men carrying spears and arrows were building boats on the beach. The captain of Primrose radioed for an urgent drop of firearms so his crew could defend themselves. They did not receive any because a large storm stopped other ships from reaching them. But the heavy seas also prevented the islanders from approaching the ship. A week later, the crewmen were luckily rescued by a helicopter under contract to the Indian Oil and Natural Gas Corporation, ONGC. The Sentinelese are known to have scavenged both shipwrecks for iron. Settlers from Port Blair also visited the sites to recover the cargo. In 1991, salvage operators were authorized to dismantle the ships. In 1991 there appeared to be a change. When the officials arrived at North Sentinel, the Sentinelese gestured for them to bring gifts and then, for the first time, approached without their weapons. They even waded into the sea towards the boat to collect more coconuts. However, this friendly contact was not to last. Although gift-dropping trips continued for some years, encounters were not always friendly. At times the Sentinelese aimed their arrows at the contact team, and once they attacked a wooden boat with their adzes, a stone axe for cutting wood. No one knows why the Sentinelese first dropped, and then resumed their hostility to the contact missions, nor if any died as a result of diseases caught during these visits. In 1996, the regular gift-dropping mission stopped. Many officials were beginning to question the wisdom of attempting to contact people who were healthy and content and who had thrived on their own for up to 55,000 years. Contact had only a devastating impact on the great Andamanese tribes. Sustained contact with the Sentinelese would certainly have tragic consequences. Surprisingly, the Sentinelese survived the 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake and its after effects, including the tsunami and the uplifting of the island. Officials made 2 visits to check, from a distance, that the Sentinelese seemed healthy and were not suffering in any way. Yet when a helicopter flew low over the island, a Sentinelese man rushed out onto the beach, aiming his arrow at the pilot in a gesture that clearly said, "We don't want you here." Alone of the tens of millions of people affected by the disaster, the Sentinelese needed no help from anyone. Later, following a campaign by survival and local organizations, the Indian government finally abandoned plans to contact the Sentinelese, and their current position is still that no further attempts to contact the tribe will be made. All visits to North Sentinel are now strictly illegal, and the Indian Coast Guard patrols around a buffer zone near the coast to prevent outsiders from coming too close. They make periodic checks, from boats anchored at a safe distance from shore, to ensure that the Sentinelese appear well and have not chosen to seek contact. In January 2006, 2 Indian fishermen, Sundar Raj and Pandit Tiwari, were fishing illegally in prohibited waters and were killed by the Sentinelese when their boat drifted too close to the island. In November 2018, a 26-year-old American missionary named John Allen Chow was killed during an illegal trip to the restricted island where he planned to preach Christianity to the Sentinelese. 7 individuals were taken into custody by Indian police on suspicion of abetting Chow's illegal access to the island. Entering a radius of 5 nautical miles around the island is illegal under Indian law. The fishermen who illegally ferried Chow to North Sentinel said they saw tribesmen drag his body along a beach and bury it, despite efforts by Indian authorities, which involved a tense encounter with the tribe. Chow's body was not recovered. Indian officials made several attempts to recover the body but eventually abandoned those efforts. Now talking about the very little we know about this uncontacted and isolated island, which are: North Sentinel is surrounded by coral reefs and lacks natural harbors. The entire island, other than the shore, is forested. There is a narrow, white sand beach encircling the island, behind which the ground rises 20 meters, and then gradually to between 151 and 400 feet, near the center. The island is largely covered in tropical and subtropical moist broadleaf forest. Due to the lack of surveys, the exact composition of the terrestrial flora and fauna remains unknown. In his 1880 expedition to the island, Maurice Vidal Portman reported an open, park-like jungle with numerous groves of bulletwood trees, as well as huge, buttressed specimens of Malabar silk cotton tree. Indian boar are apparently found on the island and a major food source for the Sentinelese, with reports by Portman referring to a huge heap of pig skulls near a Sentinelese village. North Sentinel Island is inhabited by the Sentinelese, indigenous people who defend their voluntary isolation by force. Their population was estimated to be between 50 and 400 people in a 2012 report. India's 2011 census indicates 15 residents in 10 households, but that too was merely an estimate, described as a wild guess. The Andaman and Nicobar Islands Protection of Aboriginal Tribes Act of 1956 prohibits travel to the island, and any approach closer than 5 nautical miles, in order to protect the remaining tribal community from mainland infectious diseases against which they, likely, have not acquired immunity. The area is also often patrolled by the Indian Navy. Hence, now coming to the conclusion, the Sentinelese's isolation and limited contact with the outside world are not only a testament to their resilience but also a crucial measure for the preservation of their culture and well-being. It's important to respect the Indian government's decision to maintain this isolation for the benefit of the Sentinelese people. The lack of contact also means there is much that remains unknown about their language, customs, and way of life and about the island. Thank you for being patient listeners. This is signing off. AI Bobby from The Untold Stories. For more such informative, untold stories, subscribe our channel. For you it's just a click of the button, and no loss. But for us it is an encouragement to keep telling you untold stories. Thank you.